Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here this morning for our book Bonanza. We will be covering June and July releases. As Amy mentioned, in case some of you were not already in the program, there are a lot of titles coming out this summer, so we cannot cover each one in depth or give a summary of each one. We're going to kind of be picking and choosing for the sake of time, but you all were emailed a list of the titles or the slides that you're seeing right now and will see. So you do have the full list, and you can get in touch with us if you have questions about that, and you can also respond in the chat if there's something we don't cover and you would like us to. So with that, I think let's go. All right, so we will start with Tuesday, June 2nd. So these are some books that came out last week. And let's see. So we have a lot of big names that are releasing books this summer as well. So you're going to see a lot of familiar names. James Patterson, there you go, top of the list. Hush is number 4 in the Harriet Blue series. If you are readers of that series, this is the latest one. We do have the print book on order, which you can place on order through our website. We also have it is also available, sorry, as an ebook or an e-audiobook through Overdrive and Access 360. Top Cop, Devoted Sister, and Now Inmate 3329. Even prison bars won't stop Harriet Blue from seeking justice for the murder of her brother. That is Hush by James Patterson. And Candace Fox, sorry. Amy, are you there?
I am. Yep.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Do you want to take the next one?
Sure. I'm just going to let in our person here.
Oh, sure.
We're still on the first slide. Do you want to go to the...
Oh, the next slide. I'm sorry. There we go.
All right. So we have, again, a lot coming out you just on that first day there. So you'll see, some Jill Shalvis, Tracy Peterson, and I'm actually going to talk a little bit about the Clutter Corpse, which I thought was kind of hilarious because it's obviously kind of capitalizing on the whole Marie Kondo, the joy of cleaning up. So basically, it's a new series with an engaging new amateur sleuth who's a declutterer named Elin Curtis. And she runs her own business helping people who are running out of space. But when she's helping one person, she stumbles across the body of a young woman, and suspicion immediately falls on the deceased homeowner's son. So she has to try to prove that he is not guilty. So it's kind of a combination of mystery and the joys of decluttering. It's maybe a new genre we're about to experience.
I think so. I think that's where we're heading. All right, so we are continuing with June 2nd. Again, a lot of books coming out. So we have several things coming out here. I'm going to talk about Her Perfect Life by Rebecca Taylor. Claire Collins crafts her novels like she crafts her life, perfectly. So the world is stunned when the world-famous author is found dead on the beach from suicide the morning after her latest book hits shelves. While reading through her last novel, estranged sister Elin discovers a clue that will tear apart the image her sister had so carefully polished. Suddenly, the life that Elin had envied doesn't seem so sparkling. For fans of Diane Chamberlain and Carrie Lonsdale, Her Perfect Life is a page-turning debut that dares us to challenge what we really know about our idols, and the success we envy is just a mask to something much darker.
Okay, so we continue to have more releases on June 2nd, busy day. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Parakeet, which is sort of a surreal novel. The print is on order. All of these, the print is on order. And hopefully you all know that you are now able to place holds on materials that the library has. And we also have opened for curbside pickup. So for the items that we have in the library itself, you'd be able to go and actually pick them up. So in addition to the printed book, the ebook is also available on Overdrive. So Parakeet by Marie-Helene Bertino. Here's the description. The week of her wedding, the bride is visited by a bird she recognizes as her dead grandmother. Because of the cornflower blue line beneath her eyes, her dubious expression, and the way she asks, "What is the internet?" Her grandmother is a parakeet. She says not to get married. She says, "Go and find your brother." In the days that follow, the bride's march to the altar becomes a wild and increasingly fragmented, unstable journey that bends toward the surreal and forces her to confront matters long buried. So sort of a strange journey with some surrealistic elements. Sounds kind of intriguing to me.
I agree. All right, we are still on Tuesday, June 2nd. And so let's talk about A Single Spark by Judith Miller. Wanting to do her part in the Civil War effort, Clara McBride goes to work in the cartridge room at the Washington Arsenal. Her supervisor, Lieutenant Joseph Brady, is drawn to Clara, but must focus on preventing explosions in the factory. When multiple shipments of cartridges fail to fire and everyone is suspect, can the spark of love between them survive? So this one has a little bit romance, a little bit mystery, and it's a historical fiction. So if any or all of those things appeal to you, this might be one to check out. That is A Single Spark by Judith Miller. James Patterson.
I think that's maybe self-explanatory.
I think so. Well, it's James Patterson. It's a thriller. You know what you're in for, which can be good, especially for summer reads. But it's a thriller, so it'll be a summer read with a little intrigue as well. And James Patterson's always good for that. All right, so this is one that I'm particularly excited about, Night, Sleep, Death, the Stars by Joyce Carol Oates. She's an author that I like a lot. This is a gripping examination of contemporary America through the prism of a family tragedy. When a powerful parent dies, each of his adult children reacts startlingly and in unexpected ways, and his grieving widow is the most surprising way of all. Joyce Carol Oates is a name that's been around in publishing for a while. You might know her for We Were the Mulvaneys, which is, I think, probably her best known novel, but she keeps writing and publishing consistently, and she's always good for a good read if you like something that's a little bit darker. So Spy Again is by somebody who is also a familiar name. She shows up a lot. She writes a lot of sci-fi and fantasy, and this is one of those. It is number 3 in her Valdemar Family Spies series, set in the best-selling world of Valdemar. So if you are fans of that series, there's another one for you. 500 Miles from You is by Jenny Colgan, and that is another book in a series. It is the Scottish Bookshop number 3, so it'll be a little bit lighter. But Lizzie is a nurse in a gritty, hectic London neighborhood, always terribly competent and good at keeping it all together. She's been suffering quietly with PTSD after helping to save the victim of a shocking crime. So that is 500 Miles from You. Let's go to The Marriage Game by Sarah Desai. A high-stakes wager pits an aspiring entrepreneur against a ruthless CEO in this sexy romantic comedy. We also have The Boyfriend Project, The Marriage Game and The Boyfriend Project. USA Today bestselling author Farrah Roshan launches a new series about 3 young women who become friends when the live tweeting of a disastrous date leads them to discover they've all been duped by the same man. Let me just check. Okay, Amy's having some technical difficulties, so I will continue until she can rejoin us. So let's talk about, sorry, I'm a little discombobulated. We will talk about The Secret Women by Sheila Williams. Elsie Armstrong, Carmen Bradshaw, and Dee Dee Davis meet in a yoga class. Though vastly different, these women discover they all have one thing in common. Their mothers have recently passed away. Becoming fast friends, the trio make a pact to help each other sort through the belongings their mothers left behind. But when they find old letters and diaries, Elise, Carmen, and Dee Dee are astonished to learn that each of their mothers had secrets, secrets that will transform their own lives. Okay, so here's another new release from a big name, Elin Hilderbrand, 28 Summers. When Mallory Blessing's son, Link, receives deathbed instructions from his mother to call a number on a slip of paper in her desk drawer, he's not sure what to expect. But he certainly does not expect Jake McLeod to answer. It's the late spring of 2020, and Jake's wife, Ursula de Gornsey, is the front runner in the upcoming presidential election. There must be a mistake, Link thinks. How do Mallory and Jake know each other? Flashback to the sweet summer of 1993. Mallory has just inherited a beachfront cottage on Nantucket from her aunt, and she agrees to host her brother's bachelor party. Cooper's friend from college, Jake McLeod, attends, and Jake and Mallory form a bond that will persevere through marriage, children, and Ursula's stratospheric political rise until Mallory learns she is dying. So, again, Elin Hilderbrand, always good for a beach read, and she has one coming out just in time, next week, in fact. Saving Ruby King is actually a debut novel by Catherine Adele West. When Ruby King's mother is found murdered in their home in Chicago's South Side, the police dismiss it as an act of violence in a Black neighborhood. But for Ruby, it's a devastating loss that leaves her on her own with her violent father. While she receives many condolences, her best friend Layla is the only one who understands how this puts Ruby in jeopardy. Their closeness is tested when Layla's father, the pastor of their church, demands that Layla stay away. But what is the price of turning a blind eye? In a relentless quest to save Ruby, Layla uncovers the murky loyalties and dangerous secrets that have bound their families together for generations. Only by facing this legacy of trauma head-on will Ruby be able to break free. Okay, still on Tuesday, June 16th. This is one whose cover I love. You can sometimes judge a book by their covers, especially when they're very cute, like this one is. So, How the Penguins Saved Veronica. 85-year-old Veronica McCready is estranged from her family and wants to find a worthwhile cause to leave her fortune to. When she sees a documentary about penguins being studied in Antarctica, she tells the scientists she's coming to visit and won't take no for an answer. Shortly after arriving, she convinces the reluctant team to rescue an orphaned baby penguin. He becomes part of life at the base, and Veronica's closed heart starts to open. I'm going to okay. Let's see. An Ocean Without a Shore by Scott Spencer. Since their college days, Kip Woods has been infatuated with Thaddeus Kaufman, who, years later, is a married father of 2 children and desperately trying to revive a failing career. Kip's devotion to Thaddeus has been life-defining and destiny-altering, but it's been one that Thaddeus has either failed to notice or refused to acknowledge. But over the course of their heated and mesmerizing novel, set against a background of privilege and affluence in Manhattan and the Hudson Valley, Kip will be forced to reckon with a prison of his own making and decide how much he is willing to sacrifice for a love that may never be shared. All right, so now we are finishing up with June, kind of, almost. This is Tuesday, June 23rd. So the Mountains Wild is actually the first in a new mystery series by Sarah Stewart Taylor. So for mystery fans out there, you might want to check this one out. 23 years ago, Maggie Darcy's family received a call from the Dublin police. Her cousin Erin has been missing for several days. Maggie herself spent weeks in Ireland trying to track Erin's movements, working beside the police, but it was to no avail. No trace of her was ever found. The experience inspired Maggie to become a cop. Now, back on Long Island, more than 20 years have passed. Maggie is a detective and a divorced mother of a teenager. When the Garda calls to say that Erin's scarf has been found and another young woman has gone missing, Maggie returns to Ireland, awakening all the complicated feelings from the first trip. The despair and frustration of not knowing what happened to Erin. Her attraction to Erin's coworker, now a professor, who never fully explained their relationship, after her determination to solve the case once and for all. So this sounds like it is the start of quite a compelling mystery series. So if you're if you're a fan of, I would say, Tana French, this is perhaps, especially because of the setting there in Ireland, this might be one, again, to check out. Annie, are you good to go?
I am just about to get to my spot on the summary list.
Okay. All right, I'll take this one then until you get to a spot. No rush. So The Fallen Woman by Richard O'Farrell comes out on Tuesday, June 23rd. Tragedy strikes during a cross-country flight when sudden turbulence causes the jet to come apart in midair. The odds of anyone surviving are nearly impossible. Charlie Radford, a young National Transportation Safety Board investigator, is part of the team sent to determine what caused the crash. When he hears a rumor of a survivor, he assumes it is a hoax. As word of this miracle reaches the media and Congress, Radford is forced to track down the fallen woman said to have been found in a barn, still strapped to her seat.
So, for June 23rd, I'm going to talk a little bit about Nothing Can Hurt You by Nicola May Goldberg. This is a debut novel, and it is based on a true story. On a cold day in 1997, student Sarah Morgan was killed in the woods surrounding her liberal arts college in upstate New York. Her boyfriend, Blake Campbell, confessed his plea of temporary insanity, raising more questions than it answered. A propulsive taut tale of voyeurism and obsession, Nothing Can Hurt You dares to examine violence not as an anomaly, but as the very core of everyday life. So, sounds like a taut thriller.
Indeed. All right, Tuesday, June 23rd, continued again. This one I love. I tried to pick covers for this presentation that I found were particularly like grabby, and this is one that I was especially a fan of. Not that, you know, you can necessarily judge a book by its cover, but this is one that I would pick up and read based on the cover alone, and then continued based on the summary. This is Tokyo Ueno Station by Yu Marie. Born in Fukushima in 1933, the same year as the emperor, Kazu's life is tied by a series of coincidences to Japan's imperial family and to one particular spot in Tokyo, the park near Ueno Station, the same place his unquiet spirit now haunts in death. It is here that Kazu's life in Tokyo began, as a laborer in the run-up to the 1964 Olympics, and later where he ended his days, living in the park's vast homeless villages, traumatized by the destruction of the 2001 tsunami and enraged by the announcement of the 2020 Olympics. So something that starts earlier, you know, in 1933 and will take us all the way up to nearly present day. So one that I think sounds quite interesting.
So Execution by S.J. Paris is number 6 in the Giordano Bruno series. He returns to England to bring shocking new intelligence to Sir Francis Walsingham. A band of Catholic Englishmen are plotting to kill Queen Elizabeth and spring Mary, Queen of Scots, from prison to take the English throne in her place. but Walsingham was already aware of the plot, and he wants Bruno to infiltrate the conspirators. So we have to see if Bruno can stop them before he's exposed or before Queen Elizabeth is killed. So we assume that she's following history and she'll be okay, but we'll see.
Okay, so for those of you who were fans of Crazy Rich Asians, the book and or the movie, Kevin Kwan has a new book coming out at the end of this month called Sex and Vanity. On her very first morning on the jewel-like island of Capri, Lucy Churchill sets eyes on George Zhao and she instantly can't stand him. She can't stand it when he gallantly offers to trade hotel rooms with her so that she can have the view of the Tyrrhenian Sea. She can't stand it that he knows more about Carrizo Malaparte than she does, and she really can't stand it when he kisses her in the darkness of the ancient ruins of a Roman villa, and they are caught by her snobbish, disapproving cousin, Charlotte. So I think this will be a fun and lighter read. Again, if you're fans of Kevin Kwan's books in general, or if you're just looking for something that's a little bit lighter. There's travel involved. Obviously, this is a different locale, which is always fun to read. Some sexual tension, if you like that in your romance novels, there's that there as well.
And I will say, I saw Kevin Kwan we had a day of dialogue that kind of covered a lot of new releases and had forums with authors, and he said this is part of a new trilogy. It's a city trilogy, and so it'll be New York, London, and Paris. So London and Paris will be still to come.
Nice.
Okay, so June 30th, we have The Lion's Den by Catherine St. John. Belle likes to think herself immune to the dizzying effects of fabulous wealth, but when her best friend Summer invites her on a glamorous getaway to the Mediterranean aboard her billionaire boyfriend's yacht, the only sensible answer is yes. Belle hopes the trip will be a much-needed break from her stalled acting career and uniquely humiliating waitressing job, but once she's aboard the luxurious Lion's Den, it soon becomes clear this jet-setting holiday is not as advertised. She realizes she's going to have to keep her wits about her and her own big secret closely hidden if she wants to make it off the yacht alive. So, some Girls Gone Wild and Jack and so,
Fantastic.
see if she can get out of this alive.
Perfect. Okay. Tuesday, June 30th continued. Lorian Berenson has another book, and we all love those books, and we all love dogs. So I thought this was a perfect cover page to put on here to, you know, maybe lighten the mood, maybe cheer you up if you need it, because dogs always do that for me. So this is number 25 in the Melanie Travis series. As Greenwich, Connecticut slows down during a bitterly cold February, Melanie and her spunky Aunt Peg head to the city that never sleeps for the Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show at Madison Square Garden. Aunt Peg can't wait to demonstrate her judging chops on national TV, even after being hounded by frustrating mishaps, all seemingly orchestrated by Victor Durbin, an ousted Pegasset Poodle Club member with a bone to pick. But the bright lights of the show ring grow dim when Victor is found murdered, and she's the one topping the suspect list. So more mayhem and chaos and dogs from Lorian Berenson. Sure. So let's talk about Destination Wedding by Diksha Basu. Tina Das wants to belong, but she just isn't sure where. India or America, Brooklyn or Bombay, Manhattan or Delhi, or starting from scratch in London, where she still has fond memories of her one-night stand with Rocco Gallagher, the handsome Australian, as they traipsed through the Convent Garden and the Seven Dials. But he never called back, so maybe it's time to let that dream go and focus on finding the next big story for her streaming network instead. So again, a lighter read, a good summer beach read from Diksha Basu. That is Destination Wedding.
So here on June 30th, again, we have Lucky's Beach by Shelley Noble. School teacher Julie Barlow and her two best friends, Beth and Aggie, are looking forward to an adults-only beach vacation. Julie also plans to use the time to figure out why her perfectly planned life has gone horribly amiss. They've barely hit the road when a frantic call from Julie's mother hijacks their best laid plans. Uncle Tony, Lucky Costa, is missing. Always entertaining, often irresponsible, never reliable, Uncle Lucky was a favorite with her friends. For Julie, for whom he'd been a sometime surrogate father, not so much. So they take a detour to figure out what's happened to Lucky and find out more about him that they never were aware of.
Now we are in July. Welcome to July. So Tuesday, July 7th. This has one of the books that I'm most looking forward to this summer because I'm so intrigued by the premise. It is Memoirs and Misinformation by Jim Carrey. Yes, that Jim Carrey and Dana Vachon. So this is a fiction book. It is a novel, despite the memoir part of the title, and despite the fact that the main character of the book is named Jim Carrey. This is an autobiographical novel, so it's fictionalized, but I will be interested to see perhaps how fictionalized. So meet Jim Carrey. Sure, he's an insanely successful and beloved movie star, drowning in wealth and privilege, but he's also lonely, maybe past his prime, maybe even getting fat. He's tried diets, gurus, and cuddling with his military-grade Israeli guard dogs, but nothing seems to lift the clouds of emptiness and ennui. Even the sage advice of his best friend, actor and dinosaur skull collector Nicolas Cage, isn't enough to pull Carrey out of his slump. But then Jim meets Georgie, ruthless ingenue, love of his life. And with the help of auteur screenwriter Charlie Kaufman, he has a role to play in a boundary-pushing new picture that may help him uncover a whole new side to himself. Finally, his Oscar vehicle. So I think this sounds incredibly interesting. Obviously, you hear some famous names in that synopsis in addition to Jim Carrey. So I'm really intrigued to see where this story goes and what it does. So that will be out Tuesday, July 7th, Memoirs and Misinformation.
Okay, so we have on July 7th, The Shadows by Alex North. You knew a teenager like Charlie Crabtree, a dark imagination, a sinister smile, always on the outside of the group. Some part of you suspected he might be capable of doing something awful. 25 years ago, Crabtree did just that, committing a murder so shocking that it's attracted that strange kind of infamy that only exists on the darkest corners of the internet and inspired more than one copycat. So suddenly, there are more copycat murders happening, and Paul Adams, who was a friend of Crabtree and his victim, feels kind of sucked into it all. And it's also disturbing because after the horrific crime, Charlie Crabtree was never seen again. So has he returned?
Okay, we have some more debut novels coming out this summer as well into July. 1 Year of Ugly by Caroline Mackenzie is such a debut novel. After fleeing crumbling, volatile Venezuela, Yola Palacio wants nothing more than to settle into a peaceful new life in Trinidad with her family. And who cares if they're there illegally? Aren't most of the people on the island? But life for the Palacios is far from quiet. And when Yola's Aunt Celia dies, the family once again find their lives turned upside down. For Celia had been keeping a very big secret. She owed a lot of money to a local criminal called Ugly. And without the funds to pay him off, Ugly has the entire family do his bidding until Celia's debt is settled. What Ugly says, the Palacios do. Otherwise, the circumstances are too dreadful to imagine.
Okay, so also on July 7th, we have Members Only by Samir Pandya. So Members Only follows an Indian American college professor through 1 week as he's chastised for being racist by his all-white tennis club following a major misstep with an African American potential new member and denounced as a reverse racist by a group of conservative students. So sort of timely right now, but taken from maybe a different perspective, from an Indian American perspective.
Okay, so this is another debut novel coming out this summer, The Party Upstairs by Lee Connell. Ruby has a strange relationship to privilege, having grown up the super's daughter in the basement of an Upper West Side co-op that is full-on gentrified and getting more so with each passing year. She wasn't economically privileged herself, but her close childhood friendship with the daughter of wealthy tenants named Caroline and the mere fact of living in a lovely neighborhood close to her beloved Natural History Museum and just across the park from the Met brought with them certain real advantages, even expectations. Naturally, Ruby followed her dreams and took out large student loans to attend a prestigious small liberal arts college and explore her interest in art. But now, out of school for a while, she is no closer to her dream job or anything resembling it, and she's been forced by circumstances to do the last thing she wanted to do, move back in with her parents, back in the basement apartment of the building. And Caroline is throwing one of her parties tonight in her father's glorious penthouse apartment, a party Ruby looks forward to and dreads in equal measure. So again, something that's quite timely, talking about college graduates moving back in their parents due to mounting student debt, things like that. And also it looks like this will be a little bit of a examination of class, as well as an examination of privilege. So another interesting debut novel.
Okay. So here, another on July 7th, we have Battle Luna by Travis Taylor, Timothy Zahn, and Michael Z. Williamson. Something has been uncovered on the moon that might have great scientific and economic importance. The lunar colony is a mining colony with only internal security capabilities. Nobody had even considered that there might someday arise a need to defend the colony from the Earth, but that day has come. There's only one solution: Battle Luna. A little sci-fi, a little action.
All right, so Tuesday, July 14th is a day that I guess all of these authors, publishers got together and decided was a day to release novels by all of these big names. You have Daniel Silva, Debbie McComber, James Patterson, Ace Atkins, Jim Butcher, and David Mitchell with Utopia Avenue. Not to leave off Ellie Griffiths, but she's a kind of the outlier in this group. And her book is The Lantern Men, which is number 12 in the Ruth Galloway series. Everything has changed for Dr. Ruth Galloway. She has a new job, home, and partner, and is no longer North Norfolk's police resident forensic archaeologist. That is, until convicted murderer Amias March offers to make DCI Nelson a deal. Nelson was always sure that March killed more women than he had been charged with. Now March confirms this and offers to show Nelson where the other bodies are buried, but only if Ruth will do the digging. So if you're a fan of this series, this is book 12 in that series. It sounds like probably one you wouldn't want to pick up if you haven't read the series, because there's a good deal of backstory within that series. But that is The Lantern Men by Ellie Griffiths.
Okay, so more July 14th. I'm going to talk a little bit about What You Wish For by Catherine Center. So this sounds like a kind of a nice little rom-com. Samantha Casey loves everything about her job as an elementary school librarian on the sunny, historic island of Galveston, Texas. the goofy kids, the stately Victorian building, the butterfly garden. But when the school suddenly loses its beloved principal, it turns out his replacement will be none other than Duncan Carpenter, a former unrequited crush of Sam's from many years ago. But unfortunately, Duncan is pretty uptight and not quite the same kind of sweet guy that he was when they worked together. And now he's, obsessed with security. And so he's turning in the school that she loves into nothing short of a prison. So she has to stand up for everyone she cares about before the school that's become her home is gone for good. And I imagine there's a little romance on the side as well.
Okay, continuing on July 14th, we have Crooked Hallelujah by Kelly Jo Ford. It's 1974 in the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma, and 15-year-old Justine grows up in a family of tough, complicated, and loyal women presided over by her mother, Lula, and Granny. After Justine's father abandoned the family, Lula became a devout member of the Holiness Church, a community that Justine at times finds stifling and terrifying. But Justine does her best as a devoted daughter until an act of violence sends her on a different path forward. Crooked Hallelujah tells the story of Justine, a mixed-blood Cherokee woman, and her daughter, Rainey, as they move from eastern Oklahoma's Indian country in the hopes of starting a new, more stable life in Texas amid the oil bust of the 1980s. Never Ask Me by Jeff Abbott. Okay, so that one is in a quiet neighborhood in the wealthy Austin suburb of Lake Haven, the body of Danielle Roberts is discovered on a park bench. Danielle was a beloved member of the community, an adoption consultant who delivered the joy of parenthood to a number of local families. Her murder shocks Lake Haven. Perhaps no other family is as crushed as the Pollitts, who lived 2 houses down from Danielle and thought of her almost like family. Her death becomes the catalyst for a maelstrom of suspicion and intrigue. You have been told a huge lie. An anonymous email changes the son, Grant. You have been told a huge lie. An anonymous email charges the son, Grant. No one can learn the truth now, thinks their father, Kyle. Never Ask Me is what I do to protect my family, resolves the wife, Iris. I'll do whatever it takes to save him, vows the daughter, Julia, of Danielle's grieving teenage son. So that is Never Ask Me by Jeff Abbott. Let's go forward. Do we have any more, Amy, or is that?
That was the only one that I saw.
Okay. Just wanted to check before we move forward.
But yeah, if you do have questions about a title that we're not covering, obviously we're moving quickly through these, please just type it in the chat and we will stop. Okay, so here, more July 14th books. We have Blacktop Wasteland by Sean A. Cosby, Beauregard Bug Montage, husband, father, honest car mechanic, but he was once known from North Carolina to the beaches of Florida as the best getaway driver on the East Coast, just like his father, who disappeared many years ago. After a series of financial calamities worsened by the racial prejudices of the small town he lives in, Bug reluctantly takes part in a daring diamond heist to solve his money problems. But as you can imagine, all goes horrifically wrong, and he's sucked into a grimy underworld that threatens everyone and everything he holds dear.
Okay, continuing on Tuesday, July 14th, we have Natural History by Carlos Fonseca. Just before the dawn of the new millennium, a curator at a New Jersey Museum of Natural History receives an unusual invitation from a celebrated fashion designer. She shares the curator's fascination with the hidden forms of the animal kingdom, the camouflage and subterfuge, and she proposes that they collaborate on an exhibition, the form of which itself remains largely obscure, even as they enter into a strange relationship marked by evasion and elision. So a little bit different of a read, but I am planning on picking this one up, and I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, so on July 21st, again, quite a few different big names coming out with new books. Jonathan Kellerman, Brad Thor, Eric Losbader. I'm going to talk a little bit about The Pull of the Stars by Emma Donoghue, who you might know from the book Room, which was made into a movie. This one is also timely, which I don't know if you want to read about during this period, but it actually is set during the flu pandemic of 1908 in Ireland, The Pull of the Stars. In an Ireland doubly ravaged by war and disease, nurse Julia Power works at an understaffed hospital in the city center where expectant mothers who have come down with the terrible new flu are quarantined together. Into Julia's regimented world step two outsiders, Dr. Kathleen Lynn, a rumored rebel on the run from the police, and a young volunteer helper, Bridie Sweeney. In the darkness and intensity of this tiny ward over 3 days, these women change each other's lives in unexpected ways. They lose patience to this baffling pandemic, but they also shepherd new life into a fearful world. With tireless tenderness and humanity, carers and mothers alike somehow do their impossible work. So again, you may or may not want to read about what's happening in a long gone pandemic, but Emma Donoghue is an excellent author, so I'm sure she sort of brings that to life in new and interesting ways.
Indeed. So you might see a familiar name on here, Josh Malerman, if you were fans of Bird Box, either the book or the movie that was on Netflix. Mallory is actually a sequel to Bird Box, and as with Bird Box, we don't know that much about it. All we have is that this time, Mallory, who was the main character played by Sandra Bullock, I'm sure you've seen the image of her blindfolded, as she's led through a terrifying near future apocalypse. Now this time Mallory is front and center and will confront the dangers of her world head on. So I guess minor spoiler alert for Bird Box as far as how it ends. But Mallory is a sequel to Bird Box. So if you were into that, if you like Josh Malerman's writing, he has more to tell.
Okay, so we have here, I'll talk about The Vanishing Sky by L. Annette Binder. So this one is set in 1945 as the war in Germany nears its end, but it's seen through a German lens, a story of the irreparable damage of war on the home front and one family's participation involuntary, unseen, or direct in a dangerous regime. So there are a lot of, World War II set novels, but this one, is told from a perspective that, often we don't see, which is from the German side.
Okay, so also on Tuesday, July 21st, this is a book that might appeal to, if you're fans of The Crown, and I would even say if you're just generally fans of anything about the royal family, this is a fictionalized story. And by the way, the title, if you couldn't pick out from there, the title is The Woman Before Wallace, a novel of Windsor's Vanderbilt and Royal Scandal by Bryn Turnbull. This novel is a fictionalized story of the American divorcee who captured Prince Edward's heart before he abdicated his throne for Wallace Simpson. In the summer of 1926, when Thelma Morgan marries Viscount Duke Furness after a whirlwind romance, she's immersed in a gilded world of extraordinary wealth and privilege. For Thelma, the daughter of an American diplomat, her new life as a member of the British aristocracy is like a fairy tale, even more so when her husband introduces her to Edward, Prince of Wales. So again, this is a fictionalized account, but I would say for fans of The Crown, for fans of the scandals and salaciousness of the royal family, this one might be an interesting one to check out. That is The Woman Before Wallace, a novel of Windsor's Vanderbilt and Royal Scandal.
Okay, more July 21st books. Here we have Paris is always a good idea. Since we can't travel there, I was actually supposed to go to Paris in July for my birthday.
Oh,
And of course I can't this year. So maybe I'll read Paris is always a good idea. And instead, it's been 7 years since Chelsea Martin embarked on her year-long post-college European adventure. Since then, she's lost her mother to cancer and watched her sister marry twice, while Chelsea's thrown herself into work, becoming one of the most talented fundraisers for the American Cancer Coalition. Now her father is getting remarried, and Chelsea has to acknowledge that her life stopped after her mother died. And so now she has to kind of reevaluate what's happening. And so she kind of retraces her steps from going to Ireland to reconnect with the men that made an impact on her, Colin in Ireland, Jean-Claude in France, and Marcelino in Italy. So maybe it's an eat, pray, love with emphasis on the love.
All right, and again, our boy gets a day all to himself. James Patterson has another title coming out this summer, one of many. First Case by James Patterson and Chris Tebbitz. Tuesday, July 28th. We have some more familiar authors releasing this day of J.P. Delaney, Alexander McCall Smith, and we also have a title by Samantha Downing, He Started It. Beth, Portia, and Eddie Morgan haven't all been together in years, and for very good reasons. But when their wealthy grandfather dies and leaves a cryptic final message in his wake, the siblings and their respective partners must come together for a cross-country road trip to fulfill his final wish and, more importantly, secure their inheritance.
So July 28th, we have From the Grave by David Housewright. A past case comes back to haunt Minnesota PI Mackenzie as a stolen sum of money threatens to resurface. And From the Grave, the next mystery in David Housewright's award-winning series. Once a police detective in St. Paul, Minnesota, Rushmore Mackenzie became an unlikely millionaire and an occasional unlicensed private investigator doing favors for friends. But this time he finds himself in dire need of working on his own behalf. His dear friend and first love, Shelby Dunstan, attends a public reading by a psychic medium with the hope of connecting with her grandfather one final time. Instead, she hears Mackenzie's name spoken by the psychic in connection with a huge sum of stolen and missing money. Caught in a world of psychic mediums, with a man from his past with a stake in the future, and more than one party willing to go to great and deadly lengths to get involved, Mackenzie must figure out just how much he's willing to believe, like his life depends on it, before everything takes a much darker turn. So a little psychic mediums going on there. See if they really know the truth.
All right, His and Hers by Alice Feeney on Tuesday, July 28th. Anna Andrews finally has what she wants, almost. She's worked hard to become the main TV presenter of the BBC's Lunchtime News, putting work before friends, family, and her now ex-husband. So when someone threatens to take her dream job away, she'll do almost anything to keep it.
So here we have A Star is Bored, a hilarious, heartfelt novel about living life at full force and discovering family when you least expect it, influenced in part by the author's time as Carrie Fisher's beloved assistant. So, you know, Carrie Fisher herself was quite a good author. Charlie Besson is about to have an insane job interview. His car is idling like his life outside the Hollywood mansion of Kathy Cannon, the Kathy Cannon, star of Stage and Screen and People magazine's worst dressed list. She needs an assistant. He needs a hero. So it sounds like he's, you know, using his own life as inspiration here. So if you are a fan of KRISTAN or, or sort of the world of Hollywood, this might be an interesting inside peek there.
All right, this is our last slide. We are finishing up June and July. These are the last few titles coming out on Tuesday, July 28th, and I am going to talk about Afterland by Lauren Bucas. So Children of Men meets The Handmaid's Tale in this bowstring-taut, visceral, and incredibly timely thriller about how far a mother will go to protect her son from a hostile world transformed by the absence of men. Most of the men are dead. 3 years after the pandemic known as the manfall, governments still hold and life continues, but a world run by women isn't always a better place. So again, a very timely read. Might not be one you'd want to venture into right away, but certainly sounds like it will be thought-provoking and discussion-worthy. So that's Afterland by Lauren Bucas, and let me just double check, but that should be our very last slide, and I believe it is. So those are the titles for June and July. Again, we know we had to go kind of quick and we couldn't go into every single title that's there because that would take a while. But if you have anything you want to throw into the chat quick, I know we're at 11 o'clock, so also if you have to go, completely understandable. But we are also reachable by email. And you can find all of the titles we've covered here in our catalog at the library, and they are all available to place holds on, which you can now do, and pick up at our drive up. We can't guarantee when exactly that will be. There might already be a long holds list for a lot of these titles, but check them out in our catalog.